With the last episode of season 3 of Yellowjackets, the mystery of who is Pitgo gets resolved, who is the Antler Queen, and also who killed Lottie. So, starting off in present times rather than the past like we usually do, by the end of this episode, we see an alliance form between Misty and Taissa, and it seems to be because both of them feel that when it comes to Shauna, it's difficult to try to maintain this vibe of them being the Three Musketeers or any type of combination where they need to look out for each other, which includes her. Because at this point, Taissa realizes that from the journals that Shauna kept, her killing her lovers, what she did to Melissa, even things back in the past, Shauna has long been a liability, but what could have been forgiven or forgotten after a certain point, it's now becoming way too much to let things go. So with that, it seems her and Misty are gonna try to look out for each other in ways that maybe they wasn't necessarily trying to do before. But why is this whole thing coming about now and it didn't really come earlier? Well, it's because Taissa seemingly wants to blame Shauna for Van's death because Shauna took things too far with Melissa, thus leading to Melissa knocking everyone out and Van getting into the situation where she had a one-on-one fight with Melissa that she lost. But it should be clear, while Van did die, because Taissa decided to bury her in the woods and eat her heart, it doesn't seem like the next season's gonna start like this one did where we get a funeral. I mean, we may get one for Lottie, but we're not gonna get one for Van. And speaking of Lottie, when it comes to her death, we learned that it was because of Callie. Misty in the last episode saw Callie's picture on Lottie's phone. She decided to confront Callie, and Callie pretty much just confesses. It seems that after the whole tape thing, and with her not being able to listen to it, then Lottie taking the tape, Callie went to confront her, and she caught Callie caught Lottie in that basement, which was a shrine so that Lottie could speak to the wilderness. It's all very weird. And unfortunately for Lottie, when Callie confronted her, it seemed to be that was meant to be the end for Lottie. And it seems that Lottie even knew that this was supposed to be the end for her. But despite knowing this could be end, she still didn't try to buy herself more time. When Lottie was talking to Callie, she kept saying the type of things that I don't think any teenager would want to hear, in terms of when Lottie was talking about Shauna and Callie was talking about how she feels this distance, she doesn't know if her mom loves her. Lottie keeps bringing up the wilderness, how Callie's a child of the wilderness, how Shauna and Callie have this connection to the wilderness and this brutality and all this other stuff that makes Callie very uncomfortable, to the point she wants Lottie to either slow down, if not completely stop. And then add in that Lottie brings up Callie's older brother who died, and it's just too much, to the point where Callie feels the need to physically push Lottie, and she pushes her down the stairs and kills her. Now, Misty ends up not being the only one who learns of this. Later on, Jeff learns about it, and it seems, despite what Jeff said in the last episode, well, not the last episode, but I think the one before that, where he kind of acknowledges and accepts that his wife's a little bit off, he decides that he needs to take Callie away from the situation, maybe just away from Shauna, and they both need a break from her and everything that's going on in her life. Now, of course, being that Shauna isn't the best at taking accountability, she decides to confront Misty. Misty says the type of things that don't help the situation. And with this, it seems like the facade that Shauna has been trying to keep up for so long, with it now being broken, it could lead to that dark side that we've seen of Shauna, deciding that it's time to rear its head rather than allow for this persona that Shauna has been trying to keep up, similar to Taissa with, being this wife, mother, senator type. It seems that whatever you can call dark Shauna, it's about to rear its head and have a good old time. Which brings us to the past. As we know, when it comes to the Yellowjackets in the 90s, they spent about 2 winters in the wilderness somewhere, and we're we are reaching the second time they went to winter. And at first, it seemed like they'll be fine, they'll be cool, but it seemed that through Lottie and Aquila may have poisoned the animals, and that's what led to her vision. And with the animals dying, Lottie calls for a hunt. Now, being that the hunt has been very traumatic for a lot of people, and Van is the one who usually issues the cards, Thaisa and Van try to work together in order to make it so that Hannah draws the cards so that she ends up the one dying. Unfortunately for their plan, Shauna picks up on this, and be it because Shauna plays the long game or maybe something else, she positions herself so that instead of Hannah getting the card, the Queen of Hearts, so that she ends up the one being hunted, it ends up being Mari. And we learn Mari ultimately is Pit Girl, and she's the one that falls into the pit and gets impaled multiple times and dies. Now, part of Mari being Pit Girl is important because Mari has friends. So unlike in past hunts, there are people trying to distract Shauna, trying to distract Van, trying to distract Thaisa, the main people who have a good chance of hunting and killing Mari. And while they're focused on the hunt, and there's distractions to give Mari a little bit more time, Natalie is taking advantage of learning that Misty had the transponder from the plane. There's the piece from the what Hannah, Edwin, and them had, and she decides while the hunt is going on to use the skills and knowledge that she got from being a ranger for the group for a long time, and she goes to the highest mountain point she can find. She puts the pieces that still work together, and she's able to make contact, which ultimately means the reason why everyone got saved is because of Natalie's efforts, which when you think about all that comes once they get back to Jersey, makes Natalie's story from this point on even more devastating. So again, to the review section. Again, Natalie being the person who got them back home, it led to some tears, mainly because when you think about it, Natalie's life, as hard as it was in the wilderness, and Sean was especially making it harder, when you take note that when she gets back, she not only has this off and on relationship with Travis, who's a little bit shell-shocked, but then she gets into drugs, becomes a burnout, and other things happen until she eventually dies because she gets stabbed by Misty. It hurts in a way that I think that the initial death of Natalie didn't. And maybe in some ways that may lead up to the other deaths that happen, whether it's Van's death, whether it's Lottie's death. Maybe what we see as they start to bridge the past and the present, and we see a lot of what they went through, it'll make their deaths less like a throwaway thing to try to get a pop on social media or whatever, but really be something that kind of has some type of backing to make it all the more hurtful, assuming that's a word, that these characters died. Because, as we've been saying for most of the season, the heart of the film is less the heart of the show is less so in modern times, but more so in the past, because that's when you can really get connected to these characters. Meanwhile, the present day stuff, as much as Sean is entertaining, Misty's entertaining, it still, even at this point, feels like they're just relying on what is set up with them from their younger counterparts. Though, let me say, the madness of Shauna still very much is the main highlight of the more modern times, especially in terms of something that's consistent. For Shauna, the interesting arc that she's going through is watching her go from this housewife who's trying to be this perfect mom, perfect wife in some kind of way, and seeing her slowly but surely watch this facade that she's built up degrade, disintegrate, whichever word you prefer to use. From between the affair, between killing someone, being part of the Yellowjackets hunt again, you see this wall that she's built up get completely demolished, and all because there's something in Shauna that I feel like she wants to honor, but at the same time she knows that the person who she built up in the wilderness, that made her feel powerful, that made her feel some sense of autonomy and what have you, she can't really be and honor that person in New Jersey, in the real world. And I think there has been a fight with that entity or that sense of who she is since the beginning. But unlike with Dark Taissa, I don't think that Shauna and what could be considered Dark Shauna, if you want to go that route, are two different people, like a split personality. I think it's one and the same. It's just Shauna's been suppressing herself. And at this point, with losing the friendships that she may have had, losing her husband, losing her child, with nothing really to lose anymore and really not that much to gain either, it puts her in a position where she perhaps may decide to go off the rails, and it's going to be very interesting to see how she may do so. Which leads to the last highlight, and that's just Misty and Taissa joining forces in Granted. A part of me feels like this is another case of Taissa kind of latching onto somebody who can give better storylines and performances, but I could be wrong. I'm probably not, but I could be wrong, and it's kind of an interesting dynamic when you think about it, considering Taissa's still a little bit in her own downfall because she's no longer a senator. Her wife and kid want nothing to do with her. So having Misty, who's someone who needs to be needed, and those two being involved is definitely the type of storyline and the dynamic that I don't think can sustain both characters, especially can't sustain Taissa. But for at least a couple of episodes, it's going to be interesting to see those two potentially pursue a real friendship and not just a trauma bond or a defense pact of some kind. But on the defense side of things, I feel like the reveals or the answers to questions kind of felt rather bleh. Who is Pit Girl? I think most people have assumed that's Mari for most of this show, so it not being switched to somebody else kind of was a letdown, but at the same time, we know at this point Lottie made it to the present. The girl didn't look like Taissa because of hair texture, so we know it wasn't her. Van, we know, also made it to the present, so it would have to be Mari. So it's not a big deal. And of course, we know it could have been Hannah, but at the same time, we also know that Hannah dies, so it was never a real big thing of who was going to be Pit Girl at this point. And then when it came to the whole Antler Queen thing, the plus and minus of it all is that Shauna being an Antler Queen, you could perhaps push the idea that that's like her version of Dark Taissa, but at the same time, because the Antler Queen has been haunting characters beyond Shauna, it just feels like something just feels off about it. And then going with the whole Callie being the one that took out Lottie, it just doesn't have that oomph. I mean, it's great to get an answer to these questions, especially because these have been lingering to the point that it almost feels like it's been built up to the point it can't really be like a major shock anymore of who did what. But I don't know. I want to give Yellowjackets grace because it is an original production, and with that, of course, are going to come some kind of pitfalls, no pun intended. But I really do think when it comes to mysteries, the less mysteries this show tries to do, probably the better it will be, because I don't think there's been a mystery resolved yet that has really been like shocking in a good way and not just kind of like mediocre, and if not mediocre, just like, oh, at least they're wrapping that up. Which leads to the last on the fence topic, and that's just Jeff leaving Shauna. Now, the negative side of that is Jeff literally just seemed like he accepted who Shauna is in terms of her madness and her issues. So why is he leaving her now is a little bit questionable, even though he recognizes probably because of their child and what she's going through. But the positive side of this is, when it comes to Yellowjackets, strangely, even 3 seasons in, we haven't really seen the families of the Yellowjackets. We've met Lottie's dad, but in terms of the adults, we haven't really gotten to see their blood relations. Taissa, for example, when she was a kid, it seemed like her family was some kind of close. So not seeing a single one of them, especially after she blew up her life, that seems kind of strange. And granted, Van necessarily didn't have a close relationship with her parents, so that could be written off. But Shauna, from what it seems, and also Jeff Extension, I believe came from a Catholic family. So for them to not have brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, parents showing up, checking on Callie, checking on them, it doesn't seem normal or right. And I'm hoping that with season 4, hopefully something that happens, and considering that in the past we're getting to that point when the girls are going to get rescued and come back home, we start to see the comparisons of what their family members are like in the present day compared to how they were when they first got home. And that can kind of open the doors as to why some people did better than others, and why others, like Natalie, perhaps went down the road that they did. But overall, when it comes to the season finale of Yellowjackets, I feel the need to always remind myself that this is an original production. There's not an adaptation that they can base things on, so there's some level of grace that needs to be there. And at the same time, even though a lot of the mysteries lead to lackluster results, at the same time, there's still an interest there. There's still ideas, thoughts, theories that pop up, like what could happen in terms of the gap between when they get rescued in the modern times, potentially meeting these parents and family members. There's still so much that the show can do that it doesn't feel like it's at a dead end. I would even add, when it comes to Shauna, as much as we're thinking that she's going to go ballistic and crazy because of now losing everything, what if it was all this time that when it comes to her Jones and everything, she decided to put him out there, and what we're seeing is a recreation of everything she went through? What if everything and all the kind of criticisms we have is because everything's from Shauna's perspective, and she's filling in the gaps as she can, and that's why things are the way they are? I mean, it's not the best theory, but at the same time, it always feels like there's possibilities with what Yellowjackets is presenting us. And with that, we still find ourselves invested and hopeful for what's to come.